let's address directly now. What do we think the objective / purpose of school should be? So my thought process for this, before I get to what my opinions actually are, was to think, okay, well, everyone's got to go through this. So everyone's going to have the same experience. Well, then what is it that every human being wants? And then what does every human being have in common? Because we're all going through this. We want to make it as applicable to each individual as possible. So I think they're the first things to consider for me. My answers to these were, what is it that every human being wants? I think it's just to get the most out of life or to realize their full potential. And it sounds a bit hokey, and I know we've done it in other topics that, realizing your full potential is kind of the objective of life. But I do think that it is. And when you understand what that means, it's less hokey, less ethereal, and more practical than we may give it credit for. And then the other thing, what does every human being have in common? We, meaning us as individuals, are at the root of everything we do. So what I mean by that is throughout life, no matter what we do, we are going to be there because, it's all from our perspective. It's all we're there to experience it. So that should be taken into account when we're thinking about, okay, what should we be doing as part of school? Now, before I get to my opinions, do you want to say anything?
I think that's quite good. So I think like the first part, that self-realization, you're reaching your full potential. I think the reason why we try to strive to that is that each of us, I guess, as humans, want to see our purpose in life, and it's usually through some sort of social contribution to our peers or group or tribe or however you want to describe it. So, that I think is definitely what people strive towards, is what am I good at? What can I actually bring to the world and help people with? And I think that's sort of like that second part, to realize that you are part of the world and you can contribute something. And so what is it that you can contribute? And so if you can focus on that internally, then you're probably going to get the best out of yourself. And when you get the best out of yourself, I think society gets the best out of you. So
I think and the reason I say that the purpose of life is to realize your full potential is because I think that is when you have a feeling that's, this is a good feeling that I want more of, it's because you've reached your potential. That is what's giving you that feeling. I mean, this is just from my perspective and thinking about it and what it actually means. Like, what does it mean when you feel good about something? Why is it that you feel good about it? And not necessarily just in the moment, that you feel good about it over time, because you might do something now that you feel good about, but in a week's time you feel bad about it. Like you managed to manipulate again or control someone to get them to do something which you feel good about now because it gives you some kind of physical elation. But then in a week's time you think, I didn't feel good about that. I feel bad about that. So it's because you've what do they call, what's the word? You cut off your nose to spite your face, something like that. I can't remember the exact saying, but it's like you haven't seen the forest for the trees. You've just, been very short-sighted and haven't realized the consequences of those actions there. But in time, you will realize the consequences. So I think when we get those feelings that tell us this is good, I want more of this feeling, it's because we've reached our potential. That's very general, that's very abstract, but I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, I agree. I guess like through life, you're trying to, it's really hard because you're being pulled and pushed in all different directions. You're trying to balance what you want out of life as opposed to what other people want out of life. And I guess, just focusing on, like you said, that time in which there's some kind of intuition that says to you that this is there's something in this that's what I want. And I guess if you get that feeling, you want to try and narrow down or focus on that feeling, because that's really your authentic self as well. There's this intuitive drive, and we don't know why. So like a musician might have an intuitive drive, or a sports star might have an intuitive drive. For me, I have an intuitive drive to solve problems. I can't tell you why that's the case. I was just born that way. Ever since a kid, I'd try and fix things or, make things or whatever. So I think when you find that feeling, It's to recognize that that is part of your authentic self, and to try and keep that in the barrage of the world around you is probably a really important thing to try and do.
Yeah, very well put. I think once you find that thing that gives you that feeling of, oh, I want more of this, I want to do this better, that's what you should stick with, and you should give it your all. One of the things is that when you don't give it your all, when you just half-ass something, that's when we usually feel lousy about it. It's like, doesn't matter what it is or what you're doing, if you give it your all, you'll feel better about it. And then the perfect scenario for me is that you find something that interests you and you give it your all, and then you get the greatest feeling. Like, you can find and be doing something that you're totally disinterested in, but if you're giving it your all, you still get a feeling of satisfaction from it. But if you find something that you're interested in, that you're giving it your all, that's, like, to me, how you get the best feelings out of life.
Yeah, you're right. I wonder if it's like there's a level of efficiency between what it is that you're actually really desire, as opposed to something that you just have to do. So I would imagine that, yeah, when you feel that level of desire and that intrigue and curiosity about that field or whatever it is that you're doing, that's probably where you're most efficient with your energy. You know, you're most motivated, so you're going to get the greatest level of output. And so that's the kind of mindset which is going to make you very valuable. But if you're, like you said, if you're doing something that you're not very interested in, there's the lack of motivation, which decreases the level of energies, which impacts the outputs. And it might not be obvious, but yeah, you might be less productive than you could be.
A little bit of a tangent. To me, I see motivation as a reduction in effort. So if you're motivated to do something, it takes less effort out of you to actually do it. Whereas if you're unmotivated to do something, you can still do it. It's just going to take you more effort. So that's why, like you said, if you can find that thing where the motivation is inherent or is natural, you don't have to think about it. Like, I use the example of eating. Like, no one has to tell you to eat. You just feel hungry. You're motivated to do it. And so it takes little effort to actually go and find food. But it takes a little bit more effort, say, if you're working in a cluttered environment, to say, what is the benefit of me getting up, cleaning up this environment, and then getting back to work? You have to actually find the motivation in there. Oh, because if I clean up everything, it's going to make it, less of a impact on my mental processing, and I'll be able to concentrate more on what I'm doing. Like, there's various other things that are a benefit for it, but you have to do the work to figure out the motivation there. It's not necessarily as apparent.
Actually, yeah, when you said it, it makes more sense to say that, yes, it takes less effort rather than you gaining more energy from motivation. So yes, I would say that if there's something that's is not your authentic self, there's a certain level more effort that needs to overcome in the thought process that you might put through, or the physical process that you might put through, that you otherwise might not when you're motivated by that task or whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I tend to see that the effort, or willpower, I call it when I'm talking about effort, you have a limited supply. So you can max that out, and then you just have to reduce the cost of performing actions through various means. But I've written a piece on that if anyone wants to further information about it.